To make use of this look pack, you can go ahead and just throw it on one of our monitors and be able to use it out in the field immediately. But to be able to get more use out of it down the line, what I would recommend doing is tweaking the looks to work with your specific cameras and your specific setups that you're going for. There's a whole host of variables that can change the way that a scene can look. And most of the time, the looks that I've created won't work perfectly for every scene. You'll most likely have to tweak some things to get them to do that. So that's what this video will be about. I'm just going to show you how to modify some of these looks to be able to work in various shooting environments, and that will allow you to resave a new look file out of that modification and apply that back into a live shooting scenario if you choose. So we're using DaVinci Resolve Lite to do that. The reason we're using that software is because it's really good and it's free. So what I have here is I have some clips in my master media pool. These are just clips that I've grabbed just in various locations off my computer. I would recommend grabbing as good of a variety of clips as you can to create new looks based off of them. We're not going to create an edit of any kind. We're just trying to get as wide a variety of various clips as we can. So if you can think of any shooting scenario that would use a particular shot style of anything you've shot in the past, go ahead and throw in one of the clips from that camera or that day and sort of mess around with it. And if you can create something that looks good in that scenario, that means you'd be able to shoot in that exact scenario again and get a look that you expect out of it. Once you've browsed through your hard drives and thrown some clips into the media pool down here, I would recommend selecting everything and right-clicking and going to Clip Attributes and check this little radio button that says data level 0 to 1023. What this will ensure is that your footage will not be clipped. There are a few cases where I've edited some footage or color graded some footage in here and realized that the high and the low ends of the footage actually get clipped a little bit, and that is because it gets automatically set to video levels sometimes, which cuts off the very bottom end and the very top end of your value range, which is for color grading really, really bad. So you just want to make sure that that's on data levels and then hit OK. And then once we have that, we can just go ahead over to the Edit tab. From here, we're just going to take all of our clips and throw them into a timeline. And to do that, just right-click in this area that says No Timeline, click Create New Timeline, and uncheck the Empty Timeline box. And when you create a new one, it will automatically take all the clips that were in your media pool and throw them into a new timeline. So nice and simple. From here, let's go ahead and click on the Color tab. This is where we get to make all of our adjustments. So you can see this horizontal view here of all of our clips laid out in this timeline, and you can just click through any one of these to be able to move through your clips. You can drag left and right through here. If you want to full screen the clip, you can hit Command or Control F and then drag it this way, which is very handy. And up here you have the nodes view, or nodes graph, I should say, which this is where all of your corrections are held. So essentially, you can think of these nodes as containers for your corrections. So I can make a whole lot of corrections. I can move all of these around, change the color up drastically, and then now I have all of those corrections housed in this node here. So if I create a new node, which a normal node is just called a serial node. I wish it was just called regular node or something, but what serial means is it's all in a line. And so if I make any corrections down the line, it means that it will operate one after the other, where certain other operations you can do in parallel or layers, but that's for a different topic. But anyway, I just like to keep mine kind of separated out individually. and that is able to keep me organized. So you can see these little icons here represent the kind of color corrections that we've done on this particular node, and this one has none. So what I can do is I can actually right click on here, and adding a lookup table is just like any other correction. It can be contained in these nodes. And so if I go and scroll down to 3D LUT and scroll down to movie LUTs, now that's the folder that we added in to DaVinci. This is the LUT pack. So let me try one of these. Let's do like the Moonrise one. So you can see, yeah, obviously way too red, but that's because I have this node that I created in front of this one. So I can actually go ahead and delete this node, and you can see that they were, just operating independently of one another. And if I disable and enable this single node here, you can see that that lookup table is affecting the footage. Yeah, the reason mainly for doing things this way is these serial nodes is what I can do is actually feed in the color that I want this LUT to accept and work on. That LUTs, generally are expecting some kind of color data to be able to make various transformations on it. So if it has, if you send it a file that's largely gray or doesn't have much color data in it already, it's not going to be able to do a whole lot with it because it doesn't have anything to begin with. So a lot of the time you'll want to sort of treat your footage a little bit to feed it into that look, so it can operate more efficiently. And then in addition to that, once you have that done, you can create another node on the end. So let's add a serial node after the LUT, and let's say I want to tweak the color beyond what the normal look would do. So let's say this look has a limited saturation. It only goes to a certain limit. Well, I can add a node after that in the line and then boost that saturation up further and take things in a direction that the LUT was not intending to do. So that's kind of the workflow I like to use, is sort of feeding in what the LUT is expecting and then making tweaks after the LUT in your own creative direction. So for this one, I'm just going to get rid of the one off the end just for simplicity's sake. So you can see it looks pretty decent right off the bat. It's got kind of this green sort of shadow looking tone here, which was part of the look. But I can take this clip here and sort of feed it a little bit extra. This was shot on the Blackmagic Pocket Cam, which has a little bit less saturation than, or quite a bit less saturation actually, than most cameras when shooting in its flat profile. So I can go ahead and add some saturation right here. And I'm making sure to double click on this node here, because since we're feeding that into the LUT first. So just double click that node, and then you can tweak the saturation here. And I'm just dragging this up. Actually, I'll go ahead and drag it up all the way. And let me full screen this so you can see the difference. So I'm going to do Command D, and you can see that switching back and forth on and off. So it's just giving us a little bit extra saturation. Command D will simply turn on and off a single node, where Alt or Option D will enable and disable all nodes like that. So you can see I've got a little bit of extra color in there. It still has this overall like blue cast. So let's say I want to kind of try and negate that. I can move around these controls now. So I have lift, gamma, gain, and offset. And lift controls the shadow tones, gamma controls the midtones, and gain controls the highlights, whereas offset sort of controls everything at the same time. And I recommend playing with all of these. They each are going to have obviously different results, but they all have a place, and I use them constantly, and a lot of the time you won't know necessarily to use one or the other until you just sort of experiment. And so I definitely recommend just kind of playing around with them. I frequently find new ways of doing things just by kind of messing around with them because they are easy to deal with. So anyway, let me drag the offset a little bit. So you can kind of take this, and like I was saying just now, just kind of experimenting with it. I mean, I didn't, or I'm not sure which direction I want to take this in, but I'm already seeing some things that look pretty cool just by moving it around. So what I'm trying to do is just sort of maybe balance out the color a little bit. So you can see I've gotten rid of some of those green tones now. And you can notice how small the movements are here. I hardly move this wheel at all, but it has a relatively drastic look. So I can do the full screen thing again. So you can see Command D going, or Control D going between. This is with the look, but without any corrections before it, and now this is with the corrections I just added. So quite a big change there. But I like that now. So let's say I want to keep this look, and if I have a pocket cam and I've got a sunset shot, I know what that's going to look like. It's going to look like this if I save this out as a new look. So I can go ahead and do that by clicking on the clip in the timeline and then saying generate 3D LUT. And I'm just going to go ahead and save this right onto the SD card. And I'm going to call this, I think the original LUT was called Moonrise. So I'm going to do Moonrise. Let's see, MG for magenta, because you can see down here I've sort of pushed it towards the magenta a little bit. So I'm just going to call it that. And you can call it whatever you want. And actually I can create a folder too. I'm going to go ahead and create a movie LUT folder on the SD card, and that way the monitor will be able to read it from that folder, and we can keep organized that way. So actually let me do Moonrise Pocket Magenta for the camera. So yeah, so now you have a completely new look that you would have normally had it look like this with a bit of green, but you're able to sort of tweak that to taste, and that way you're able to get an infinite amount of looks out of a nice sort of small starting pool of them. So let's try another clip. Here we've got a shot from a Sony FS100, which is quite a bit different in a lot of ways as far as color response as a Blackmagic camera. So that should give us something a bit unique. So let's try the same look just to see what we get out of it. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to the movie LUTs, go back to Moonrise. So, it's looking quite saturated. So you can see it's kind of the opposite problem that we had with the Pocket Cam, but it's still looking pretty good. That's the thing with these looks. You're going to want to just experiment to be able to get new ideas, really. I wouldn't expect any of these looks to just work perfectly right off the bat, just because of the many variables that kind of go into it. But it does allow you to see something new that can kind of give you a new idea and let you go in a good new kind of creative direction. So let's try something here. I'm going to, let's see, maybe I'll sort of give ourselves like a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to add a serial node before current, so I can apply some corrections before the LUT. And I'm going to, let me just drag, this is the lift here, so the shadows, I'm going to bring the shadow tones down a little bit, and you'll see the picture modify as I do that. So I'm getting some extra contrast. So I'm getting just a really, heavily saturated image out of here, obviously. And so that's something that I'm going to want to actually kind of combat a little bit. What I do like about the image is the blue tones. The water looks really good, but the skin tones, in my opinion, are just starting to oversaturate a little too much. So in that case, we can actually take a special curve control. I actually have it open right here, as a matter of fact. If I sample the skin tones, which actually you make sure that you're using the right control, and that way you'll get this little eyedropper thing. So at any time I can select any of these kind of controls and then bring this little sampler up here. And if that eyedropper doesn't automatically show up, I think it's right here. Yeah, there you go. So you can click the qualifier is what it's called. So let me just sample the skin tone, and you'll see what that'll do is it'll put this little mark on this curve, on this graph here. And actually I'm in the wrong tab. I'm in hue versus hue. I want to do a different one. So I'm going to right click these and get rid of them and go to hue versus sat. So what this will allow me to do, I'm going to sample that one more time, is this basically is marked where on the color wheel that skin tone is landing. And so I'm actually going to delete these other two here because it sort of gives us the center one is the actual sample. And I'm going to keep that right there for now. I'm going to go ahead and select a new point that's sort of on the opposite end of the color wheel. And you can see when I move this up and down, I've got this curve. It smoothly interpolates from one point to the next. I like the saturation of the water, so I'm going to keep that, but the saturation here, the warm tones are a little bit too much. So what I just did there was I clamped the color. These are the blues here, which I could actually sample this as well. I could just click there and you can see the orange one is dead center. So I've clamped that, and now what I can do is just bring the warms down, and you can watch as her skin tones actually become less and less saturated as I drag this down. I'll take it all the way so you can see an extreme example. So you can see now I've got all this blue water back here, but all the skin tones are completely gray. So that just allows you to dial it in exactly how you want, which is pretty handy. So let me try something like that, and then full screen it again. And I'm going to do Command D so you can see this is without the saturation correction, this is with it. So it looks, quite a bit more natural. And this, let's see, let me do everything. We'll do Option D, so you can see that's what the original footage looks like, and that's with some correction. So not too bad. So we can go ahead and save this one out too. I'm going to do right click on that, generate 3D LUT, go to movie LUT folder, Moonrise. What did we call this other one? So I can do the same thing. Moonrise FS100. We do warm desat. So that we desaturated the warm tones. So you can see, unfortunately, DaVinci does create all these big numbers and things out of these cube files when you save these out, but you can just rename those after you save them out. It's no problem. So now that we've got that saved out, we can just take those look files, throw them in any kind of project we want. We could even save them back into DaVinci, use them in anything we want. So that's the idea, is basically to be able to create all your own new looks out of these files and be able to use them for any of your future projects.